This international society would also come to the New World. And while Bacon's Rosicrucians would maintain a position of careful anonymity, the Order of Masonry would stretch its hands in America to the very heights of power. Nowhere is the Masonic presence more clearly seen than in the design of America's capital city, Washington, D.C.
Yes, Washington, D.C. is completely based on Masonic architecture.
The whole architecture is laid out in an occult manner with Masonic symbology. Every major building in Washington, D.C. has a Masonic plaque on it. I mean, the Masons have permeated, and the other secret societies have permeated our society since the very beginning.
In his book, The Secret Architecture of Our Nation's Capital, author David Oveson confirms the esoteric influence of Masonry in the design and building of Washington, D.C. Oveson reveals the occult ceremonies surrounding the laying of the city's cornerstone, a ritual that involved the father of the nation, George Washington. 200 years later, in a ceremony commemorating this event, Senator Strom Thurmond, himself a 33rd degree Mason, is pictured alongside the cornerstone upon which is carved a Masonic square and compass.
If you either look at the map of Washington, D.C. or try and drive in Washington, D.C., you think it must have been designed by a nutcase. But actually it was designed by a Freemason, a French Freemason named L'Enfant. I think Pierre Charles L'Enfant was his name. And it's full of esoteric symbolism.
Oveson writes that, like the pyramids of Egypt, the entire city was built in alignment with the stars, and suggests that the hidden purpose for the Masonic rituals is that America might be empowered by the gods of the ancient world. Can this be the reason for the pagan god and goddess images that have come to represent America? Tradition often claims that America was founded as a Christian nation only.
America was founded as a Christian nation, but it was also founded as an occult nation. And there have always been two parallel forces here in America. One the Christian, one the occult, dating back into the 1600s. And until you understand that, you can't understand anything going on in the world today.
A chief issue of debate are the very symbols that define the United States. Where did they come from, and what or who exactly do they represent? For many, the answers lie in the secret societies.
I mean, you can see their influence on the back of the Great Seal of the United States, where in 1782 they put on a pyramid capped by an all-seeing eye with the slogan beneath, Novus Ordo Seclorum, the new secular order of the world. That was in 1782. It was put on the back of the Great Seal of the United States, hidden there until about 1935, when it was taken off the back of the Great Seal of the United States and put on the back of the American dollar bill, where it is today, symbolizing the influence of the secret societies on America. And you know, there are some of our Christian ministries that want to tell you that a cult symbol is a Christian symbol. It just goes to show how effectively the Christians have been misled, and they've been misled intentionally by people who've infiltrated the Christian movement and have told them, oh, this is a Christian symbol. Well, where in Christian symbology do you come up with a pyramid? Where in Christian symbology do you come up with a glorified eye light? This is all the symbology that everybody who's involved with the occult understands.
The glorified or all-seeing eye is known as the Eye of Horus, one of the most important gods of the Egyptian mysteries. Other pagan icons include the Washington Monument, an obelisk normally dedicated to the Egyptian sun god. Meanwhile, the idea for the Statue of Liberty was taken from the Colossus of Rhodes, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, and combined with the imagery of the goddess of ancient Babylon, Queen Semiramis. But what do these esoteric elements tell us about the founding fathers of America? Who were they, and what was the light by which they saw the world and themselves in it?
The majority of the people who were in the founding fathers were either deists, or else they were free thinkers, or they were Rosicrucians, or they were Masons, or they were all.
The chief source of contention is the involvement of the founding fathers with secret societies, namely Freemasonry.
Certainly at the time when the Declaration of Independence was signed, many of these people were involved in Masonry, no question at all about it. But it wasn't because they were dedicated to the esoteric principles of Masonry. Many of these people were strong Christians.
In America, initially, the men that were elected, I believe 90% of them were all God-fearing men.
People, on the esoteric side want to say, oh, this was a Masonic country. And there's an element of truth in that, because certainly there were many Masons, once America was established, who were working in key positions.
I believe the truth is somewhere in between, as it usually is, the two extremes.
It's a timeless struggle. Both sides of this power struggle are in full play. The sides of the secret societies, trying to push forth the new Atlantis.
And so it doesn't surprise me that most of these men in the Continental Congress or the signings of the Declaration of Independence were Masons or whatever. That doesn't surprise me. It doesn't even bother me, because I know that underneath them is a vast horde of people that were biblical Christians.
Consider the conflict between President John F. Kennedy and the CIA during the Bay of Pigs invasion. The CIA reportedly lied to the president on behalf of their secret agenda involving an assassination attempt on Fidel Castro, something that would later lead to the Cuban Missile Crisis. JFK was so surprised at their power, believing it to be a threat to the American people, he vowed to shatter the CIA into 1,000 pieces. Or what about the Iran-Contra affair, where President Ronald Reagan stated emphatically that the U.S. was not providing arms to Iran in exchange for hostages being held by pro-Iranian terror groups?
In spite of the wildly speculative and false stories about arms for hostages and alleged ransom payments, we did not, repeat, did not trade weapons or anything else for hostages.
But Reagan soon returned with an apology once he learned that, yes, the U.S. was illegally selling arms to Iran, an enemy country. The profits from the sales were then being used to finance a secret CIA operation involving the Contras in Nicaragua. As with JFK, Reagan claimed that he had been manipulated and lied to by secret powers within the intelligence community.
Is going on that had been kept from me in various covert operations.
Mr. President, did they deceive you? You didn't answer whether Poindexter and North deceived you.
Presidents Reagan and Kennedy were humiliated at being the most powerful men in the world who were unaware of what the hidden powers in their own government were up to. Well, at least in the case of Kennedy. It was later revealed that President Reagan knew more about the covert actions of the intelligence community than he had let on. After all, his vice president, George Bush Sr., was the former head of the CIA and a member of an elite secret society known as the Skull and Bones. Some find it interesting that while in office, President Reagan was made an honorary 33rd degree Mason. Since then, America's presidents have all been members of secret orders, including Skull and Bonesman George W. Bush, whose war on terror is said by some to have sparked the beginnings of World War III. Bush claimed it was the CIA who provided the information about weapons of mass destruction that ultimately led to the war in Iraq. As of the making of this documentary, that information has turned out to be false. An intelligence error? Maybe. Or perhaps the same powers that were working in the days of Benjamin Franklin have never really ceased to function. Is it just a coincidence that the war on terror has provided the opportunity to spread democracy to all the world.